Hello, my wonderful, beautiful friends, guys. Welcome back to r/EntitledPeople, where people truly believe that nobody else matters in the world except for themselves. Guys, and in today's episode, yet another entitled Karen thinks that they own the damn neighborhood and decides to boss an officer around. And guys, you know it's not gonna end well. I hope you enjoyed today's super duper entitled stories. Hit subscribe if you haven't, and as always, your crazy stories can be submitted right here. I work for a car rental place. I'm the only employee at a location in a very small town. I often have to leave the store to go pick up customers, pick up and drop off oil changes, etc., etc. When I do leave between reservations, I lock up and put a sign on the door with a number where customers can reach me immediately, followed by an "I'll be back in X amount of time" sign. Now, I usually never get any calls, and some people are just hanging around on their phones when I come back. Pretty normal. However, yesterday, a woman calls when I was out dropping off a customer to a body shop. She seemed perfectly reasonable at first. So I pick up the phone and say, "Thanks for calling car rental place. How can I help you?" She starts off by saying, "Hi, will you be back soon? I don't have much time." Now, for the record, she had no reservation and hadn't previously contacted the store. I tell her, "Yes, ma'am, I'm just dropping off a customer. It should be about 5 to 10 minutes. She then says, "I'll be waiting," and then hangs up. So literally 2 minutes later, she calls back and says, "Sir, I can't let you do this. I feel like you shouldn't be leaving the store and doing this." I ask her, "Do what?" She then says, "You abandoned the store, and I'm gonna call the cops if you don't show up soon." Now at this point, I'm laughing from confusion, thinking this has to be a joke. She then says, "You need to come back right now. I'm not waiting any longer. Don't think I won't call police." Now, of course, when I hear her say police, I say, "That won't be necessary, ma'am. I'm gonna be back very soon. Please don't call the..." Before I can say cops, she hangs up. So I show up not even 10 minutes later, and I swear to God, the cops were there, waiting with her, visibly unsure about why they were there. Now, if you're counting, she waited a total of less than 10 minutes max after she knew I existed, which is longer than I've waited for fresh nuggets in a drive-thru. The woman had no reservation, contacts a business that operates based on reservations, and she literally calls the cops on me. So the cop comes up to me and says, "What's the problem here?" At that, I'm astonished, and I say, "I have no idea. You're gonna have to ask her." So the cops, having already talked to her and unable to seriously address her, they look at us, look back at each other, and then back at me and say, "Well, we hope you have a better day." The funny thing is, the woman doesn't even try to come in. The whole time she's screaming that I need to be put behind bars and that she's gonna have me fired for not being here when she needed me. She just left shortly after the cops did. Maybe she realized that she had gone through a manic episode and decided to give herself some time. Guys, I don't even know what to say to this. Like, the crazy part is she didn't even try to go rent a car. What the heck is this woman's deal? I feel like she was just walking around and was like, how can I start trouble today? And just happened to see this sign. Like, I have no idea what she said to police or how she summoned them so fast, but it's incredible they showed up so quickly, right? Maybe they wanted to see what a crazy entitled person looks like. Okay, so I'm a 30-year-old male. I live alone in a pretty meh house, and I work as an engineer. I decided to spoil myself with a nice sports car. It's a 2021 Aston Martin Vantage with manual transmission for those into those cars. The car is very expensive and only has 2 seats. So since the car's rear-wheel drive with a decent amount of power and I live in Canada, I decided to get a crappy run-down SUV, an old Ford Escape to use during winter. During the summer, I use my sports car daily and just leave my winter beater getting dusty. So one of my neighbors, a mid-20s female, recently got divorced and became a single mom. Her financial situation got bad and her ex-husband kept their car. Seeing her struggle, I let her use my winter beater during summer. She was thrilled and thankful. So one day of summer, the winter beater breaks down. Not a surprise, it was a piece of junk. My neighbor was really sad, and when we took it to the mechanic, the repairs would cost more than the value of the car, so to me, it wasn't worth fixing. So I decided to junk it. Now, my neighbor did not like this decision. She told me to keep repairing it so she could keep driving it. I said that I wouldn't be paying to repair it, and sadly, she wouldn't have a car anymore, so she would need to find another way. She said she had planned a trip with her kids and then asked me for my Vantage. I of course refused it, mentioning that she wouldn't be able to drive it because it's too much power, it's a manual transmission, and it's also a two-seater, which wouldn't fit her kids anyway. I also don't let anyone else drive it, let alone for a vacation without me. It's my baby. So hearing me say that, she storms back into her house and I simply donated my winter beater to charity. Now, if it ended there, I wouldn't have had an issue, but this entitled neighbor decides to go on Facebook and she posted a long rant in a Facebook group of our neighborhood saying that I'm a bad neighbor, how I'm unkind, and how I denied her kids a vacation. So I of course replied. I replied mentioning that she doesn't even know how to drive a manual car, and it's ridiculously dangerous for someone inexperienced to drive it, and it's a two-seater. I told her she would be an irresponsible mom if she just put both of her kids in the passenger seat, and not only is it dumb, it's illegal and dangerous, and that I have no responsibility in giving my car for 2 weeks for her to go on a trip, no matter the car. It was a massive reply. I also told her that I was disappointed with her way of thinking for assuming that I would just provide a car for her when I have nothing to do with her life. The winter beater was a favor, and she was acting entitled for thinking that I would provide my Vantage for her. Everyone else sided with me and roasted her brutally. Lots of neighbors congratulated me for my decision, but some told me that I went too far and I should have just ignored her and not embarrassed her with that long rant. People are saying that I should have said, please remember it's a two-seater, your kids won't fit, and just let her down easy. A few friends and relatives also told me that I was an a-hole for doing this and that I don't understand the struggles of being a single mom. So am I the a-hole for exposing her in such an aggressive manner? Okay, first of all, for those of you who don't know cars, a 2021 Aston Martin Vantage is like a $150,000 car, and I've seen some of them for sale for over $200,000. Like, I wouldn't let my random neighbor borrow my $20,000 Honda Civic, and this woman's expecting OP to just give her his $150,000 car. But, money aside, the point is, she wants OP to give up his only means of transportation for her and her kids to go on a 2-week vacation. And then she has the audacity to blow it up on Facebook trying to make him the bad guy for not giving her that car. Honestly, I don't think OP is the a-hole for coming at her and laying out the hard facts, because it is facts. But that's just my opinion. Guys, let me know what you think. If you had an Aston Martin, so I wouldn't even let my own parents drive my car, so there's no hope for a single mom struggling with her 2 kids. I'm sorry, I had to say that. I'll give you grocery money, I'll buy you a bus ticket, but heck no, $150,000, super car, no, that's for me only. And I think that's fair. Okay, so I'm a police officer, and this happened while I was on duty. This story was my first encounter with an entitled man. Now, what's about to happen actually takes place quite often, unfortunately, and as a result is the reason for many unnecessary phone calls to the police, and kind of what I respond to almost all the time. Anyway, I was 2 hours into my shift, and those first 2 hours were spent in the office gathering what we know about this case. Me being a little wet behind the ears, I was assigned family liaison. Now, I'm not saying this job doesn't go to the more seasoned officers, it's just more than likely to go to the new guys. It can really give you the insight and empathy that's needed to do this job. So funny enough, where I was needed wasn't a million miles away from where I actually lived. It was 2 blocks away, actually. So I get out of the car and look at the address of where I'm supposed to be, and I get ready and start walking when I'm confronted by a large, 6-foot-tall, oldish man. He looked to be in his late 50s. The man shouts at me, "It's about damn time. I called you guys 20 minutes ago." Now hearing that, I look around a bit confused because to my knowledge, I was meeting a young woman, and I was early. I say, sorry sir, I think you've got the wrong person. I'm actually... He then interrupts me and says, "What? You are police, are you not?" Now, just as a side note, one of my biggest pet peeves is people interrupting. I say to him, "Well, yeah, I am, but I'm actually in the middle of something right now, so I can't." He interrupts me again and says, "Hey, you see those kids over there?" He then points at a group of teenagers that were doing what teenagers do, standing around and having a laugh with one another. There were about 9 kids in total. They were predominantly black, with 1 white kid and 1 Asian kid, and they were all pretty much dressed in black and they were playing music from their phone. The music wasn't loud enough to cause an issue, not in my opinion anyway. They were also not in the way of anyone. They were in a park. So I say, "Yeah, I see those kids." The man looks at me and says, I want them gone. I don't want to look at them. I don't want to hear them. Who knows what they're up to? I don't want me or my kids to get stabbed by them. I then look at him and ask, they have knives? To which the man says, probably. Look at them. To which I say, oh, so you actually don't know. You're just assuming that they... The guy interrupts me again and says, well, they probably do. You know what those N-words are like. Go over there and move them along. Now, I was taken aback by his blatant racism, and as an officer, I've dealt with my fair share of racists trying to get others arrested for just existing. But he literally was complaining straight to my face about a group of kids that were doing no harm. For the sheer fact that I was early for my meeting, I decided to humor him and go speak to the kids. Not to move them along, just to see what was what. So as I walked over, the man followed me, despite me telling him to stay put. The last thing I want is this guy barking orders from behind. Walking closer, I happened to see one of the kids, who regularly came over to my neighbor's house. I knew these kids, matter of fact. 3 of them lived in the same building as me, and I often saw them playing basketball, but have never really spoken to any of them. So I approached them playfully laughing and say, hey, are you guys having a decent time? You're not doing anything illegal, are you? One of the kids responds, nah bro, we're just waiting for this guy's parents to come home so we can go to the mall. The kids then all start talking among themselves as I turn to speak to a now open-jawed man. Now I'm not sure what he was expecting me to do, especially since being this ridiculously racist. I sure hope he wasn't thinking I'd join in with his thoughts. The man quickly composed himself and attained a very angry face and says, right, you bunch of little Fs. You better F off right now or this guy will call backup and get you all arrested. Of course, hearing that, the kids all stop and stare at this guy in disbelief. I say to him, no, I won't. They're not doing anything wrong. It's not illegal to hang out at a public park listening to music and just talking. The man says, what? You serve the public, don't you? So serve. Do what I'm telling you to do. I say to him, sir, please don't shout in my face. I do serve the public, yeah, but they're doing nothing illegal. He then screams at me and says, look at them. Search them. They're gonna have drugs or knives, guaranteed. Of course, hearing that, the kids do start to get a little agitated with this guy, rightly so. But the last thing I needed was a load of kids about to start screaming at this guy. It would be a shame to arrest these kids for beating him up or doing something stupid. So I turn to one of the kids I knew and I point him out and say, hey, please control your emotions and your friends. You have nothing to worry about. Just let me deal with this. Please do not engage with this man no matter what he says. It actually might be best for you guys to just go somewhere else. One of the kids nods and turns to his friends, who have already started cussing the guy out for being old and racist. With that said, they all start to wander off, but of course being teenagers, they carry on shouting back at the man, calling him names and whatnot. The guy also carried on with his blatant racist remarks, more aimed at the Asian kid now. I then turn to the guy and say, hey, carry on and a unit's gonna be down here to pick you up. With that said, he stopped and started focusing his attention to me. His angry look didn't drop, and I knew I was in for some interesting insults. I've heard it all before though. When entitled people don't get what they want, they usually turn their anger on you. The man then raises his hand and points straight in my face and says, they should have been arrested. You didn't search them. They could have been hiding anything in their pockets, you useless piece of crap. I say to him, whoa, sir, if you carry on insulting me, I'll have to place you under arrest for disturbing the peace and drunken disorderly conduct. I can smell the whiskey on your breath. It was daytime, but you could smell the booze from a mile away. After I said this, he gets right into my face and says, you wouldn't effing dare. You arrest me and I will have your job. The man's standing there with a smirk on his face, and I raise my arm to his side as an indication for him to step aside. Now looking back, I do get it, okay? All he saw was me raise my arm, and he must have assumed that I was gonna grapple him or something. Before my arm was even halfway through its journey, the guy pushes me hard. It caught me off guard, and I fell. I didn't expect it. I was of course shocked at this, that this guy had done this. I regained my composure, and he was calling me a useless cop for falling over. Of course, at this point, I get up, ran behind him, grabbed both of his shoulders, spun him around, and took him to the ground. My other hand was free to call for a unit to pick him up. As he was pinned to the ground, he was screaming all hell that he was gonna get me fired, unnecessary police brutality, how I broke his arm, he has epilepsy, he pays my wages. He was screaming all the things that every pissed off middle-aged man says when they face arrest. It took 10 minutes for a unit to show up and arrest him. I was a little late to my meeting and also a little scruffy from the scuffle, but after explaining, she laughed and I laughed, all in a day's work. Guys, I love how OP handled that situation. Pure professionalism, right? Like, he gave that crazy man so many chances to just walk off and shut up and let the kids be. And of course, in the end, the guy had to get arrested. Like, it's unreal how some people literally try to police their own neighborhoods. I don't want to see them, I don't want to hear them, I don't want them ever standing there again, so arrest all of them. Like, I'm sorry, sir, but do you own this whole neighborhood? And it is scary because some people do think they own the neighborhood they live in. I've read so many stories about that, right? So a few years back, our store was opening a new department, and some of the day staff had been called in to help the night staff fill the shelves for tomorrow's big opening. There was quite a lot of night staff running around throughout the store, and a small handful of day staff cloistered in the new department, shuffling around dead-eyed and slack-jawed like they were auditioning for the next season of The Walking Dead. I was at the new department's computer, going over the new stock, when I see someone approaching from the foreground. I look up expecting to see a staff member, but instead, I see a very heavily pregnant woman slowly waddling up and down the aisles. Now, at first, I thought it was a customer who had snuck into our store to do some late-night shopping somehow, and some do, don't be surprised. The woman was marching, like she was in a rush, and I'm thinking, oh my goodness, I might have an exciting encounter with an entitled Karen. I'm the shift supervisor, so I feel it's my duty to approach the woman. So as I'm bracing myself to be yelled at after letting her know that she's not allowed in the store, upon getting closer, I notice the woman's in utter shambles. Her hair is disheveled, her drooping eyes are sunken and engulfed in deep dark circles, and she's wearing pink pajamas, complete with fluffy pink slippers, contrasted heavily by what's surely a contender for the most badass leather jacket I've ever seen. The thing had chains coming off of its chains. It was so badass. It took her the better part of a minute to walk down the aisle and up to the counter. During that time, my mind was racing. How did she get into the store? How did she get this far into it without being stopped by an employee? I mean, this wasn't someone who would just casually escape notice. Anyway, she gets up to the counter and we converse. I'm baffled and bewildered, and I say, "Hey, so you're not allowed to be in the store right now." The woman, after catching her breath, looks up and smiles weakly and says, "Hey." I then say, how did you get into the store? We're actually closed right now. She tells me the front door was open. Now, a little note about that. We examined the security footage the day after to see how she got in. And sure enough, the heavy automatic doors were open by about half an inch. And despite her condition, after several laborious minutes, she had somehow found the strength needed to muscle the doors open wide enough to just squeeze through. I say to her, I see. Well, we're still closed, so... She then interrupts me and says, I was told that you can still operate the cash. Now, she meant register, but she said cashier. I was even more baffled and bewildered and said, who told you this? The woman then looks over towards the direction of the entrance, and she says, they said the caches were locked, but you had a card that could open it? Instinctively, I reached down to my belt for the admin control card and rested my hand on it for a moment, hoping she wasn't crazy enough to grab for it. I then say, yeah, my card can override the system. However, all the money's already been counted from the cash registers. At this point, I thought maybe she was gonna rob me. I was starting to sweat. The woman then says, oh, I see. What if I paid by card? That would work, right? I say to her, that would work, but I'm sorry, we're closed. She then gives me a look of desperation, and I can see it in her eyes. I then say, but I suppose you've already come this far, okay, let's do this. The woman then lets out a sigh of relief, and she says, oh, thank you, this is greatly appreciated. She then turns around and starts waddling off. I then say, wait, this register isn't operational yet. Once you have your items, take them to the register at the front, the one closest to the exit. I'll be there. The woman then smiles and then nods at me. She waddles off a great deal faster than she'd arrived, as if she possessed a newfound purpose. Meanwhile, I shook off some of the night's zombification, and I slowly shuffled my way to the front of the store. About 10 minutes later, I see her waddling into view towards the counter. She was carrying one single item in both hands, and with great care, she placed it atop the counter. When I finally got a good look at the item and my mind registered what it was, my heart almost broke in two. The woman wanted infant cough syrup. Suddenly, there was a moment of pure clarity where everything just made sense. And sure enough, after the woman paid for her item, she thanked me once again and left. I spoke to my coworkers who all confirmed the conclusion I'd already reached. The woman had run into several staff, all of whom confronted her, but none of whom could bring themselves to turn her away once her purpose was revealed. The night staff were the first to intercept the woman, all of whom apologized profusely that they couldn't help, but directed her towards their team leader, who might. Their team leader then directed the woman towards the new department where there was day staff. Once the woman reached the new department, the day staff confronted her and directed her towards me, and a few even mentioned my admin card and that she would most assuredly get served. The woman had tried several gas stations before she arrived at our store. Desperation had brought her, and one way or another, she was gonna leave the store with what she came for. And I'm glad I've been able to help. Guys, when I started reading the story, I really thought it was going to be another entitled Karen that weaseled herself into the store to get something outrageous like a bicycle for her kid or something. But medicine for her infant, guys. It really goes to show that everybody you meet may or may not be fighting a battle that you know nothing about. And I'm so glad this story ended up putting a smile on my face and had such a wholesome ending. Like seriously, that's just a mama bear doing whatever she needed for her cub that was in need. And I'm so glad OP recognized someone in need and decided to help them. And that, my friends, brings us to another end of our /entitled people. Guys, I hope you enjoyed today's lineup of stories. If you did, hit that thumbs up. And if you missed the last episode on the channel, I'm gonna link it right here. It's an r/I don't work here lady, where a super duper entitled Karen demands that manager's daughter serve her. It's such a crazy story, so go check it out if you haven't. And myself and Stevie Boy will see you guys in the next one. We love you.